where we are with this round of IRC approvals. Also dive into the career coaching work that is in front of us. Happy to have our friends from JFF here to talk about that. Next slide. Before we move into the business of the day, I want to welcome Acting Secretary Harry Coker, Maryland Department of Commerce. Even though the Acting Secretary couldn't be here with us today, we're really excited to have him as part of the committee. And also super excited to have Idris Nawabi here, a new member to the CTE team, our research data analyst, and we look forward to his digging in and supporting us with all of the various data components of the work that we do. So very glad to have you here. And then finally, we want to thank Rob Linford for his service. He's recently stepped down from the committee, and we're super appreciative for all of his contributions here. Thank you, Rob. Okay, next slide. We're going to move into some approvals. Before we do that, I'm going to ask Molly to confirm that we have a quorum.
We do. So the members we have present in the room are Chair Myra Norton, Dr. Boyd, and then joining us virtually, we have Dr. Wright, Sharnetta Young, Matt Holloway, Secretary Wu, and I believe Michael Thomas is logging in just a second. I just sent him the link, so excellent. We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We've got two items to approve: our agenda for today and the meeting minutes from our January meeting. Members received all of these materials in advance, so I would ask for a motion to approve both the agenda and the minutes from somebody who was on the committee.
Motion to approve, Sharnetta Young.
And now I need a second.
Second, Holloway.
Thank you so much. Any opposed? Great, then the motion stands. The agenda and the minutes are approved. Thank you all. Okay, our first order of business is to hear from, and welcome back, Rachel. We're very glad to have Rachel back with us, putting you right to work. Rachel's going to take us through sort of what has happened in the legislative session, how it impacts our work, and some other components of the work that we're doing here and what lies ahead. So Rachel, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chair Norton. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So these are some new updates. Of course, as many of you know, session ended at midnight on Monday. So this is all fresh. I want to take a few minutes to talk about, in particular, about two bills that will really influence our work and a couple of other pieces of interest. The first one on this slide here in front of you is the governor's blueprint bill, mostly focused on altering elements and funding timelines, things of that nature for items outside of Pillar 3, where this committee's work is most focused. So most of the bill itself did not actually directly impact our work. There were, however, amendments made during the course of the session, particularly focused around career counseling, that are important to reflect on as we discuss our work here today, think about the work the committees started doing over the last few months around evaluation metrics, and also thinking about our new partnership with Jobs for the Future and how we can best leverage their support in the months and years ahead. So for those looking here at the table at the bill amendments, the career counseling components begin on page 28. And these amendments basically continue the funding structure currently set up, wherein county boards of education must pass the career counseling funds directly to their local workforce development board. Originally, this was in legislation for 3 years, ending at the end of fiscal year 2026. This revises that to essentially keep the same structure and extend it until fiscal year 2028, through the end of fiscal year 28, excuse me. Additionally, the amendments added a requirement of the AIB to report on the effectiveness of career counseling by January 1st of 2027. It lists multiple short and long-term components and metrics to be reported on. So it gets pretty specific in the language. And of course, many of you may be wondering how that impacts the evaluation work that this committee's been asked to do and that we've been talking about. So some of the metrics they're asked to report on include whether career counseling services have adequately prepared students for post-college and career readiness pathways, whether students have received high quality career opportunities as a result of the program. And they're also asked to identify some long-term metrics for determining program effectiveness in out years into the future, and how effective it is at really guiding high school students toward satisfactory career paths after high school, looking at longer-term outcomes. So there's some specifics here on this slide around a few of those. And you'll see here, we kind of took a look at this, our team, to say, okay, well, in the work that we've been doing around metrics we want to look at for our evaluation that we want these programs to begin measuring, well, first I should actually note, we made a lot of headway with local stakeholders on this through fall and last summer into winter, and kind of took a brief pause once we saw action around this taking place during session so that we didn't issue new metrics and may potentially have to reissue or change it up on everybody again 2 months later. So we took a look at a comparison to see what's in the legislation for the AIB to evaluate on, and how does that compare to some of the metrics that we've been talking about as a group. And you'll see here the bolded ones, and Molly, oh yes, right here. The bolded ones are the ones that match the CTE committee drafted metrics kind of pretty much perfectly. And you'll actually see a lot of similarity. The italics are ones that partially match or are very similar, maybe worded a little bit differently. And then the sort of regular, nothing done to the font, are the ones that were completely new, that had not yet sort of been put on paper through the work we had been doing. So again, you'll see, I think, really a lot of similarity. We'd also considered some other metrics, based on feedback from those out in the field, kind of already running programs. Those are not included here, but this just kind of gives you a sense of, there's a lot of overlap in what the IAB's been specifically asked to evaluate on by January 1st of 2027, compared to what we were planning to evaluate on by the end of this year. And if you go to the next slide, this also references some metrics in the legislation that they can consider. So that's a little bit less of a strong term than using for the evaluation itself in 2027. And that makes sense. And these are obviously longer term metrics that we might not have a lot of data on as of January 1st, 2027. So again, you'll see here, some of these actually, we didn't do the font thing, but some of these really do overlap with some of the things we'd started talking about as far as how would you continue to assess the program and what it's really accomplishing over time, in terms of things like how many students are employed in their field of interest, how many are reporting job satisfaction, how many students are unemployed or not participating in post-secondary education compared to before career counseling was implemented. Ideally, you see all those kinds of numbers going up. So I think this really sort of leaves a door open for us to sort of, as we're taking off in this partnership with Jobs for the Future that we're going to talk about a little bit more later. I think we're going to get to surface maybe some ideas and questions today around how we want to shape our evaluation work, and other supports that we're interested in providing to the career counseling ecosystem in collaboration with our local partners. We're not going to answer all the questions today. And so this also gives us, I think, an opportunity to work with the AIB to understand how we can best leverage the work each of us have been asked to do, and leverage that partnership with JFF as well. So I wanted to kind of acknowledge some of the overlaps here. Any comments or reflections or questions, just kind of on this and this kind of new information? To be determined. Anyone, and I'll pause a moment for if anyone online is raising their hand, but I don't think I see anyone. All right.
I'll just say, personally, I think this is exactly where we want to be now, working with the AIB, CTE committee, local partners, and really grateful to have Jobs for the Future leaning in with us on this so that we are collaborating on where this needs to land together and developing a shared consciousness around that. So it's really good to hear that a lot of the metrics line up with things we were already thinking about. And also, as we all discussed at the last CTE committee meeting, this notion of really identifying what the long-term goal, like if we're successful here, what does that mean? Or even though we may not be able to measure those things for a very long time, if we don't have that, why we're doing this in mind, I worry that we'll measure things that don't actually get us to where we want to be. So I'm really excited about, I think all the members of the committee are excited about digging into that.
Great, thank you. Us too. Okay. Moving right along. We also have a piece of legislation that, of course, is relevant for some of the interests of this committee around apprenticeship. And I know, I believe Secretary Wu may be still with us virtually. I know we have it for part of the meeting, and we do have Deputy Secretary Perkins Cohen here with us as well. If either of you might like to share any remarks highlighting this one, or I can do a quick summary. But
Secretary Wu
secretary who is no longer with us online, deputy secretary, sorry, yes. Pausing and waiting. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. The RAISE Act passed. That's big.
Yay.
I think sort of moving a little bit beyond the legislation itself, I think a couple things. One is, and this committee probably already heard, but the fact that the governor made it one of his signature pieces of legislation is incredibly significant. It makes a strong statement to all of us, business community, to school leaders, et cetera, that actually this is incredibly important. He totally gets it. For those that were able to hear his remarks, you know, he's fully on board and ready to put whatever resources he can behind it. And I think the fact that this bill passed in a very difficult year for legislation to pass, and particularly one that links to resources, I think is also significant. Again, we know the budget climate that Maryland is in. I think all those signals are incredibly important, but the work is also important of the specific items. So one is raise streamlines processes to make apprenticeship happen, which is incredibly important. We also need people to actually do the work. We need people to go out and sell apprenticeship to business leaders, to work closely with schools to make sure that they have what they need. And so RAISE helps to formalize a team of folks within the Department of Labor that will be singularly focused on expanding apprenticeship, and particularly for young adults, working with this committee and our colleagues at CTE and Commerce. And then there's other resources. There's financial incentives to businesses. For some businesses, diving into apprenticeship is a bit of a leap. So the more that we can make that not so much of a leap and smooth that process so that they can step in without fear of some of the financial costs that can come with apprenticeship, especially on the front end, the better. And then the last piece I would highlight, and again, others who have favorite pieces, they should jump in, but it also lays the groundwork for us to bring in some national experts. We refer to them as intermediaries. Maryland has a long history and really strong numbers of apprenticeship in certain areas, particularly in the trades, and that is phenomenal. We want to honor that, maintain that, grow that. But there are definitely sectors within Maryland that that don't have a history of apprenticeship. And if we're going to really jumpstart this to meet the numbers that we were just talking about, to really move the needle for young adults and for businesses to make apprenticeship a reality, we can't go onesies and twosies. So we're going to borrow from what others have learned. We're going to bring in some national intermediaries to focus specifically on sectors that don't have a history and aren't hitting big numbers of apprenticeship yet, to help speak the language to employers, to get into the weeds with them, to make sure that we can really move the needle and apprenticeship can grow in those different sectors. So all of that is, you know, big step is the bill passed, the governor signed it the day after signing it out. He signed it on Tuesday, which again is another sign. He highlighted it in his remarks, which again, all the signs are there, and look forward to working with you.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know I'm sure I can speak for the committee when we say that we're really pleased to see this pass, and all of the, you know, so many of the things in it are really going to be just another way to amplify and collaborate with the Department of Labor on the work we're doing here for young people. And some of the great examples we've seen as we toured around today, it's exciting to think that we can see even more of that across the state as a result of this. So congratulations to our Department of Labor colleagues, and of course to the governor's office as well. Okay, I think it's legislative updates. Any questions or comments on apprenticeship stuff before we go? Okay. Well, I'm really excited about this next piece. This is another kind of update I wanted to provide to this committee and to our members viewing the, or excuse me, our friends viewing the meeting. And this relates to some resources under the Perkins funding for career and technical education. This slide here in front of you kind of summarizes, you know, for those of you less familiar with the Carl D. Perkins Act or Perkins 5 and what those resources can do. This funds a huge portion of career and technical education across the state. And specifically, you know, a lot of this money, and Richard Kincaid from the Department of Education did a great budget presentation for us. I forget which meeting last year, but kind of outlining where these resources go, how they're used across the state. So you may remember that a lot of it goes out straight to local education agencies via formula. we do have a reserve, a state reserve as part of Perkins. And so Richard and his team have been generously collaborating, and Dr. Wright, I should acknowledge as well, we're really grateful for this collaboration around an opportunity for this committee to shape a grant opportunity for our education partners across the state to apply toward in partnership with MSDE that can leverage some up to $500,000 of the reserve and really support the priorities this committee is talking about. So what we're going to be doing kind of coming up next is really working with the committee members to design what we want this opportunity to look like, what types of things we see an opportunity to help seed and support that we're looking to see grow across the state, and what types of opportunities, how many opportunities we might be able to fund with the $500,000 pool of the reserve in the next fiscal year. So that's something we're going to be working on very quickly in the next few months. So to our members, you can expect yourselves or your designees to be asked to participate in some conversations with us to help design this. Of course, those are items that we can't, we aren't doing design work in the public meetings for obvious reasons. And to our viewers and partners across the state, please stay tuned for information on the opportunity as soon as we're ready to release it. We're really excited about working together on this. Richard, anything you'd want to add or?
No, that was great.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to designing everything.
Okay, wonderful. And again, Richard, thank you. And thank you, Superintendent Wright, as well for the partnership on this. We're really excited about this opportunity. Oh, I have one more. I'm done now. I'm not. And this one's certainly exciting, but Chair Norton shared earlier, I'm really excited to have Idris join our team. He's already been so fantastic to have on board just in the first few weeks. And we are still hiring for some really important positions on the team supporting our current technical education work. You'll see our 3 positions highlighted here. I'm really pleased to share that we are kind of wrapping up our processes for the senior director and program manager position. So fingers crossed that certainly by the time this group meets next, if not much sooner, we have some new folks for you to meet who will be really instrumental to leading and supporting the work this committee is doing. And we are also about to begin a recruitment for a senior policy analyst to support the team as well. And once this team is rounded out, I mean, we've been doing so much over the last year and a half, and there's just that much more to do now. And so this team's going to really be able to support implementation of a lot of the great groundwork we've laid so far. So if you know great candidates, especially for senior policy analyst type of role, potentially, obviously we'll release a job description, but we'll be looking for help spreading the word. Yeah, more on that soon. Thank you.
Yes, please send good candidates.
Yes,
Please,
thank you.
Yeah, great, thank you. Okay, want to give an update on industry recognized potentials. Just as a reminder, and at our January meeting, we had 229 IRCs that were approved and stand. There was a set of 14 kind of gray list, so recommended with reservations, and you can see how that has been adjudicated thus far. So 9 have submitted the required documentation to be approved. So I think that means technically we have 238 now on the list.
Right, that's right.
3 applicants decided not to submit additional materials, and then 2 have received some guidance to think about kind of reformatting their program, and they're still in the 60-day review window, so TBD those. The next steps here, I think some of what we realized in this project, let's just all level set. This is the first time we've gone through this process, right? We want to do some business rule refinement and definitions and make sure that we're giving really clear guidance to anyone who is submitting an IRC in terms of what the 9 standards that we have, 7 which are required, 2 which are preferred. We've articulated them, but you never know how clear the articulation is until you start to actually get into, okay, how does this proposed IRC match up with this standard? And so even for myself, I just said to Richard today, I want to have some time with the team to really understand what good looks like in each of those standards. What's an example of best version, maybe not optimal version, et cetera. So that's coming. We want to be able to disseminate that as well to help with IRC formation and applications going forward. We'll launch a new application cycle August 1st and go through this process again. And then those will be presented to the committee in January of 2026. We'll also we'll have the biannual review of IRCs on the approved list. So as a reminder, We don't review every IRC every year. But every other year, we take a look at all of the IRCs that have been approved and just make sure there's not something there that shouldn't be there anymore for various reasons. So this is sort of the process in front of us. Any questions about where we are with IRCs? Okay, great. Next slide. Okay. Big thank you to a number of our Governor's Workforce Development Board members who I made an appeal at our recent board meeting. We need more industry expertise to really help Richard and his team refine the core standards. And I think there have been maybe 20 total, so or there are 20 industry members on the board, so we've got almost 50% participation. Feel good about that. We need more help. If you want to go, John, to the next slide, we've kind of outlined, these are all of the areas, the core standards that we need input on. The ones in bold, we literally have no one, I think, right now. So I said this in the Governor's Workforce Development Board meeting. I want to say it again here, because I asked Richard this, like, okay, well, I mean, I've managed many technical teams, but what is actually involved in this work? And for example, I'm probably not the best person to provide input on the core standard, but my hiring managers and or talent acquisition professionals in the company are. So just to put that out there, don't just think about yourself personally, but folks that are making the hiring decisions are structuring the requirements for the role within your companies. That's the kind of expertise we need. It's not a huge time commitment. I think it's maybe an hour and a half of prep work and then maybe another hour and a half to two, right? For review. And this is really critical. We're really trying to make sure that we have industry imprint on everything we do here. And so we need this expertise. There's a QR code there and link where you can sign up. Please encourage anyone you know who fits the bill. Anything else you want to add?
I think just share far and wide. I just want to underscore your point that most of the folks that, are on this committee or that you probably interact with are your own networks. And being able to share the link out to people that who are closest to the work is really what we need. And there are multiple phases of this. So the first phase is our business review. We want to make sure our industry partners are weighing in on the knowledge and skill that's necessary for an entry-level position in this particular field. The next phase of that will be working with our educator partners, higher ed and secondary, to be part of that conversation. But we want to make sure that the hiring requisites are in place first, so that those are well articulated, and we need folks that know what those skills are to let us know if we've hit the nail on the head, if we've missed some things that are necessary that maybe we haven't seen in standards before, or if we are completely off base for what you're looking for when you're hiring, so that we're equipping our teachers with the right training and the tools to prepare students. Very, very critical.
Can I just ask the most basic question? The bold signifies what you're looking for still?
The bold is we have zero. people,
As of
but-
last week, there was no one signed up, no industry people.
But
The other
we-
ones only had like one or two.
we
So
have-
what I would
Yeah.
recommend is
Yeah.
if you know people across all of these industries, send them our way, right? We will not turn away anybody in any one of these sectors, but the ones in bold are the priorities right now.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, now we're going to talk about career coaching. We had this discussion at the Governor's Workforce Development Board meeting just a little bit ago, talking about, the CTE committee's role in really developing a strategy for evaluating programs, et cetera. And given what Rachel shared earlier, that's happened in session, the AIB's role in those kind of long-term metrics, we're certainly going to be coordinating with a lot of key stakeholders to move this work forward. And we're really fortunate to have Jobs for the Future working with us on this. and helping us to think about, do we have the right metrics? Are there some that we've missed? This, my big question about what does the masterpiece look like when the paint is dry? And reverse engineering from there, like, do we have a hypothesis of the things we're measuring today, if we are successful, that they will lead to the ultimate goals that we want, which is for our students to land in jobs that have family sustaining wages. And, so I've had the pleasure of talking with the Jobs for the Future team and really excited and impressed by the expertise and the experience that they bring to this work. So I am going to turn it over to Jerry and Gina, who's with us live and in the flesh, to kick us off and talk a little bit about how they'll approach this work.
Thank you so much. So hello, everyone. My name is Gina Davis. I am the new director of the entire Maryland Initiative for Jobs for the Future. For those of you who have never heard of Jobs for the Future before, we are a national organization that supports both education and workforce development initiatives across the country, sometimes within states, sometimes in local organizations. Really, it spans the gamut. And explicitly, the one thing I want to emphasize is it was absolutely critical to them to hire somebody who is a Marylander. So I am from Maryland. I actually graduated from a Calvert County Public School. I have 2 children who will eventually be Calvert County Public School kids. So the presence of this entire career counseling initiative, and when I reflected on my own journey, my own high school journey, one thing I always thought was, I wish I would have known what I didn't know about the jobs. And so I just think that integrating this blueprint very strategically and thoughtfully into the classroom, I mean, I just think it's just incredibly fabulous. So next slide, please, Richard. Sorry. Richard, sorry. Okay, so we're gonna probably speak for approximately the next 30 minutes, but what I do want to say is if at any point you have any questions whatsoever, whether you're online or in the room here, please stop me and ask. We want to make sure that this is a two-sided conversation, and throughout our entire conversation, we want to let you know that it is integral to the success of this that we put the locals first, because you all know what's best for your students. Most of us on our team were practitioners first, and we embed that into all of our solutions. But holistically, it won't be successful if we don't have the nitty-gritty and the understanding of how things work within your local regions, within your schools explicitly. So we are going to help you get to know JFF a little bit. Start to answer some surface questions to help inform strategy and next moves, and then develop shared priorities. So that's that co-design, that's that boots on the ground that inform how the solutions work. Next slide, please. So I would be remiss to say that it's just me alone. We have a pretty big team, myself and Leah on the bottom there. We have oversight into all of the 3 prongs of this initiative, with career counseling just being one piece of it. And then Charlotte, Jerry, Maud, Caroline, and Shauna are just incredible human beings who are also a part of this work. And Jerry will be speaking soon also. Okay, so our initiative at JFF is building a future that works for everyone. We transform U.S. education and workforce systems to drive economic success for businesses, people, and communities. And as I've said this entire time, it's from the base forward. So that means integrating employers into the conversation, integrating educators, integrating the workforce systems, so that everything comes together in the, I guess, not always the easiest way possible, but perhaps the conversation has a basis on reality to what is possible. Next slide, please. So JFF has something called a North Star, and our North Star is that by 2033, 75 million Americans facing barriers to economic advancement will have quality jobs. So a big portion of that is apprenticeship. A big portion of that is successful career counseling, so that students know exactly what's available to them before they leave the K-12 system. And then the third piece of this project, which we'll talk about all 3 components here shortly, is having informed sector strategies so that businesses are at the table before students exit and they're part of the workforce system. They're informing what is necessary. And I will speak specifically to this project being in Maryland explicitly. So we want businesses at the table. We want the students to have the skills necessary to be informed before leaving the classroom. All right. Okay, so the partnership as a whole is a comprehensive approach, and it includes us at JFF. And I know we're a national organization, but we do want to, I just want to keep emphasizing this. We want to make sure the LEAs, the workforce boards, the local employers have a seat at the table through every piece of this. We're working very closely with labor and the governor's workforce development board. So this is truly a partnership. Next slide, please. So I've said that there are a few components to this project as a whole. So together, we are going to be establishing sector partnerships aligned with local and state priorities, which with the RAISE Act passing, with all these things, there are so many pieces that we can interweave between these components. So there will be overlap between sector strategies and partnerships. There will be overlap between expanded apprenticeships because we want to make sure that it's informed with what's happening here in Maryland, what the students are interested in doing. So there's one of our goals is to expand apprenticeships, which includes engaging employers, providing direct technical assistance. So that could be, focus groups, that could be increasing the number of employers having apprenticeships, new sectors, whatever it may be, in our model to reach 500 new apprenticeships in the priority sectors, which have been heavily articulated by Governor Moore, but also we want to make sure that it is, in areas of national growth, if perhaps that, individuals happen to leave the state, and then providing the career counseling, which is vital to the individuals in this room. And then, so explicitly in the career counseling and coaching vein, these are the components that we are going to do with the locals, with the LEAs, the workforce development boards, with the employers informed. We want to support the governor's workforce development board and this committee explicitly to achieve the blueprint. Chair Norton mentioned earlier that there is a evaluation that is starting the beginning of this career counseling piece. And what I want to explicitly say is oftentimes when I hear about an evaluation, I think we're going to point out what you're doing wrong, but that's not the ultimate goal here. Our goal is to see where there are gaps and where we can provide thoughtful, mission-driven technical assistance that is actually going to support the teachers who are doing the work rather than recreate the wheel. So if that means sharing experiences, which Jerry will get into in more depth here from like what we've done in Texas or other states, we want to provide additional resources so that the teachers, the instructors, the local programs don't have to go find things. They don't have to design new curriculum. There's so much available. So we want to support local implementation through communities of practice. And I like to think of this based on roles. So like, there are instructors who are part of these conversations at certain levels. There's administrators, there's employers, and they're all interwoven when we produce our tools and our resources. And then we want to support continuous improvement and sustainability of the initiative through intentional collaboration, evaluation, and learning. Our ultimate goal is to put us out of a job so that no technical assistance is necessary in the future because we've helped to create a sustainable future while building this ship as we're flying it. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Jerry Maynard, who hopefully, Jerry, if you want to come off mute and speak, we'll be able to hear you nice and clear.
And I'm sorry, this is Michael Thomas. Is this the time to ask a question? I was trying to raise my hand and it's not working for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
go on ahead. Absolutely.
Great. So I'm just trying to learn more about what you're currently doing in Maryland with the LEAs.
Oh, I mean, so the whole project is very fresh and new and getting started here. So we haven't had the opportunity to connect with everyone across, but we will absolutely be doing that here. here soon, and if you want to add anything.
Sure, yeah, no, happy to add, and that's a great question. You know, this is the very beginning of the process, is kind of bringing this information to first the board and then this committee, and we're kind of working at a staff level to coordinate conversations with some of the core state level partners and then the core local level partners as we're kind of designing. You know, they're showing a kind of a high level, the scope of work, but as we're actually designing, okay, what are the steps, the exact timelines, et cetera. So that's kind of where the process is actually just starting, like with this meeting essentially. So the answer is nothing yet.
But
Yeah,
also
and-
to that point, we will be having more
Yeah.
intentional conversations in smaller groups to make more
Yes.
intentional planning.
That's right.
But if I can just ask, you know, maybe the spirit of Michael's question, hey, Michael,
Hey, Jason.
Is the ultimate takeaway that you're gonna have something that, if I'm a coach, is there something
Mhm.
specific that I'm gonna get from this process that will help me in the, you know, a tangible thing?
Mhm.
If I'm an LEA, is it gonna be more clear? If I'm a principal, you know, what level are we going, or is it not, is it TBD?
So I think that's an incredible question, which we are going to be discussing very shortly towards the end of this conversation. But in my head, I think I have a lot of ideas of what the products could explicitly be. I'm thinking like different regions and counties need different things. So
Mhm.
more explicitly, like something to onboard a career counselor, to provide them more resources to what they do. Explicitly, middle schoolers need very different
Mhm.
things than what a high schooler would be. So what the product can be is,
Yeah.
I hope that you all will provide that input and provide
Mhm.
guidance towards what this can be.
And the only thing I'll add to that too is on this topic of the local engagement, that's also kind of part of the process that we need to go through, right? Is understanding what tools and resources are already out there. Maybe there's best practices already right here in our state that we can just be helping share more broadly across coaches in the different regions, whereas maybe there are new things that just gaps that we can help fill through this partnership.
Absolutely. Is it a community of practice that meets at targeted
Mhm.
intervals? Is it a direct one-on-one call when you need something more explicitly? Is it a website that has resources and tools that can be reached asynchronously? Like there's so many options that I don't want to say this is all we're going to do when I think that we're still building that.
And it would be helpful, I think, for us, and maybe you're going to get to it, and I'm a little bit ahead, is to sort of understand the timeline, you know,
Mhm.
of what you're doing and the engagement piece, and also to keep in mind that career counseling and career coaching has already started based on the blueprint, you know, working with the LEAs and with MOED, in Baltimore's case, with the Mayor's Office of Employment Development and those other BWIBs as well. So just want to be mindful of that. And I think it would be helpful for us to understand not just your process and how you're going to do it, but part of that timeline and the outreach to the different stakeholders and community partners. And thank you,
And
Mr.
Oh, yes.
Assistant Secretary, for eloquently putting that question. Couldn't have done it any better. Thank you. And always good to see you, Jason.
Here.
I also want to just let you all know our relationship is for the next 3 years. So
Mhm.
we are getting started here. There is absolutely more to come. We have some ideas and opinions about what that might look like, but as I mentioned a million times now, we'd love to co-design those solutions together. So do we have any other questions before I pass it to Jerry? Well, Michael, if you have any more questions, please interrupt.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you.
Of course. All right, Jerry.
All right, thanks, Gina. Everyone hearing me okay? Is my volume all right?
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. I'm Jerry Maynor. I'm a senior director at JFF. Grateful to be able to join you virtually. And also just want to acknowledge, our other colleagues, Maud, Caroline, Sean are here virtually as well. And so I have the really challenging job of kind of collectively being a surrogate for their, brilliance and intentionality. So please, I'm going to do my best. I want to just give you a really brief intro to who we are, and you can head to the next slide, and to who I am. I'm joining you from Nashville, Tennessee, where I live and work. I happen to be born and raised here, but prior to working at JFF, I worked at the State Department of Education in Tennessee for about 6 years. where I led our career readiness initiatives at the state level and really doing similar work to what you all lead in terms of ensuring that there was intentional collaboration and planning amongst workforce development, economic development, the higher education system, the K-12 system, and other partners across the state. So, I never claim to know exactly what your experience is, but I've been, in similar shoes. At JFF, I actually came to JFF because, as you can see through this map, Tennessee has been a member of the Pathways to Prosperity Network that JFF started in 2010, which was built on the data and sort of a landmark paper out of the Harvard Graduate School of Education that was really focused on the fact that in our education reform efforts of trying to send more folks to college and increase degree attainment, we were missing all these opportunities to improve the socioeconomic opportunities of citizens through jobs and work opportunities that required less than a bachelor's degree, but something more than a high school education. So on that very basic analysis and simple idea, the Pathways to Prosperity Initiative was born. And, while for all of you who are here, who are well-informed, like the concept of career and technical education leading to a pathway is quite standard, a pro forma now. That was not the case in 2010. And unfortunately, I think because of this broad network of education and industry leaders coming together across the nation, career pathways has become a norm and a common way of talking about this, this long period of time that students and all of us, in fact, navigate to get from one point of education, experience, and learning onto another. On the left-hand side that you're seeing, those are just our 5 levers that really guide our Pathways to Prosperity work. We lead a national coalition that still gathers twice a year. We're going to be in Philadelphia next week, gathering with our partners. And so at some point, these things will intersect. Our work with you all in the state of Maryland will definitely intersect with opportunities to be a part of JFF convenings of national leaders in this work. So that's not for today, but just a note on the experience that we all bring. And also that because we've worked across the country for over a decade, I'm not suggesting that we just come in with all the answers, but we've certainly seen all the different ways that people have tried to implement career navigation systems, for instance. And so we can better help you think about the different ways you can approach it and the costs and benefits of those different strategies, partnerships, et cetera. Next slide, please. I know you all have been very patiently and attentively listening to us for a while. And so I do want to just center the human element of all of this by giving you a moment to connect with what we're engaging your leadership and your resources in, which is this idea of how do we create more positive, more transformative career navigation experiences for students. So I want to give you a chance. We're all, all of us are still potentially on a career navigation journey, right? It does not stop. It doesn't really start and end. Although, of course, some of us do want to retire, and we're probably not going to be looking at our retirement accounts for the next few weeks, regardless of that. But take a moment just to pause, reflect on whether this is as an adolescent or in the last 5 years of your life, give you a chance to reflect. And then if you're so inspired, you can turn to your partner and just tell them about one of these highs or lows.
Happy to share an example from my own life. So I'm just thinking early 2000s-ish, I don't know. The intention always was to push people towards college, and that was the goal here. And I think that it's just been that was something that I would say is missing for me, is if somebody would have given me an articulation that was different than the traditional college pathway, I think life could have been a lot different for me if I was more exposed to the wonderful things that are happening in this building. So I would say that for me, the incredible work that so many, especially the people in this room, have been doing to push trades and careers that don't require tremendous college debt. I think that would have been pretty cool for me.
Yeah, I'll say, the thing that I think about, which actually happened when I was in college, but I think the same thing can happen at any for middle school. I was in my second year or something and I discovered that I was in the business school. I discovered that I didn't really like accounting and economics, but I really liked calculus. Don't laugh at me or call me now. And so I went to my advisor and said, I think I want to major in math. Like, I want to do this. And now I'm old, so this is a long time ago, and hopefully this doesn't happen today, but I think it is emblematic of what can happen. And she said to me, oh no, you don't want to major in math because you're gonna, women, there are not a lot of women in math, and why don't you major in math education and you can be a teacher and have a family, and so I went on to do my graduate work in math but I think that the thing I guess I would say that I want for all of our kids is to not be underestimated or treated any differently based on socioeconomic status or their gender or their race or any of those things. Right. So that's what I would share.
And I think I want to share out. Well, and lean into the positive, right? And I think we need to build up on having career coaches, but also having a level of mentorship as well. And I'll say this, speaking with my 11th grade chemistry teacher, it was very critical in that moment that I decided that I wanted to major in biology, right, and minor in chemistry. But had I not had conversations and critical conversations with my teacher, right, I would have gone down another path. And I think there needs to be conversations with our guidance counselors, right, and also with our career coaches. And so when we have these intersecting moments, right, with them, not pushing them down one path, but allowing them to choose based on their interest, right, I think the level of passion will be there. But having people who are there, having mentorship and someone who's constantly coaching you, right, into an area that you will feel a level of comfort. So I think that's very critical right now.
Empowerment.
Thank y'all so much for sharing. You can move to the next slide. Certainly welcome others to share, but I know we have our time and you have other business. I'll just keep going. But what you're seeing here on this flow chart, which is really just a function of time, and even though there's lots of different strands, this is a function of time and educational attainment. You can see that in a typical high school cohort, students have many different paths that they choose after high school. And those paths obviously are influenced by exactly the things you mentioned. They're influenced by mentorship. They're influenced by their interests. They could also be negatively influenced by bias in that advice that they get or the lack of advice that they get. And they're also influenced by awareness, right? Do they know what the opportunities are, just like Gina mentioned, or do they not? Do the folks who are mentoring or counseling them know what the opportunities are that are labor aligned, for instance, or not? And so we've all experienced both those gaps, and then hopefully, and fortunately for many of us, like the benefits of those who really encouraged us and helped us identify those interests. But this is real data here that you're seeing, even though it's a hypothetical cohort. This is proportionally what happens right now in our labor markets. And you can see that those who graduate late or drop out of high school, obviously many more of them end up not in the labor force. But even for those who have on-time graduation, even have educational attainment of a bachelor's degree, still end up not in the labor force or underemployed. And so I think this is a helpful way to acknowledge that we have missed opportunities in our system. We're all aware of that. But then to use this and think about reimagining what it would look like if this pathway included apprenticeship and all the other opportunities that this initiative will be promoting and propelling, so that post-secondary enrollment and attainment is not the strongest predictor of labor market outcome, that it may be the different type of credential or the different type of pathway opportunity that they have in the state of Maryland. And I'll just pause. I know this is like a kind of a complicated slide, but it's really just meant for that visual of like us thinking about many different pathways. You can go to the next slide, but if someone has questions about the specifics of the slide, I'm happy to entertain that too. So in just that very brief share out, like you all articulated right off the cuff, like several key ideas around how you can have a shared vision for what career coaching is and does in the state. Mentorship, centering student interest, limiting bias that's based on, identities or other factors that are outside of one's control. And when we think about creating a long-term strategy and something that is durable at the scale of a statewide initiative, we always think about these things as requiring cross-sector collaboration. So you all represent that on this committee, and the initiative overall represents that cross-sector collaboration that goes from the LEA level up to state government, and includes there, if you see it, sort of like the north cardinal here, like national partners and networks, which JFF is happy to be in that role of a national partner and having you join our national network of partners. You all do have all this representation, and so you can keep going to the next slide. It's really about us understanding how can we best create the collaboration that is necessary to do this well, that leads to work that gets done and has a really clear purpose. Our experience and my personal experience tells me that, like, no, you're not going to be able to, without structurally changing, the whole funding formula for education. We know that you're not going to get, a new counselor to student ratio that's now 50 to 1 instead of 400 or 350 to 1 as it is throughout the country. Okay, we're not going to be able to change that, but you all can take the resources that are connected to the blueprint and change the paradigm for how career coaching and information gets distributed to students and families. You can't do everything, so you're going to have to make some choices. And so those choices that you make are the most important, and then how you partner is the next most important. And so we just wanted to introduce, like, this is a sort of a model of our approach. And again, these are not my ideas specifically, they're accredited there. But just to give you some examples of kind of the network mindset principles that we will try to operate with in order to strengthen the coordination and collaboration that we believe is necessary. Next slide, please. So first, and as Chair Norton was saying, and as I was trying to emphasize, it is about clarity of your goal. And Michael, and I, no disrespect to anyone, I can only see your first name in my Zoom chat, so I'm gonna use the name that I see. If I'm missing your honorarium or whatever, I apologize. But Michael, for instance, we're very aware that the work has started. The programs have to run once once the mandate is there, once the money is flowing. And with that said, we think we want to be able to help you all go back in time and ensure that there is clarity on the common goal and what you're measuring and where you're trying to get over the next 2 to 3 years as we are partnered with you. And we are here to help you move faster to get that in motion and to ensure that the collaboration is strengthening the sum of all of these parts. Can you go to the next goal? The next slide.
And Michael is great, and thank you for that. I appreciate your comment there.
Yes, sir, for sure. This part for me is, I know, so essential from my experience working in state government. When I was at the Tennessee Department of Education, we were just starting our Tennessee Promise, which was the first the nation's first tuition-free promise for all high school graduates. And the thing that made Promise possible and successful, I know you're just coming out of legislation season. This was a huge moment to get to this full support from the legislature through the governor's office, for instance. We had a statewide initiative that was focused on the economic viability of the state, at that time called Drive to 55. Lots of states have had the similar things, but this was what was bringing industry LEAs, and others across a diverse, a politically diverse state, right? From Memphis to Knoxville, you've got a lot of different red and blue dots, but folks could come around the idea that our local district's economy depends upon greater educational attainment. And that created a lot of shared goals among disparate and different partners across the state. So it was really powerful that I could go to Memphis, where all the national legislators were Democrats as well as the locals, but I could also talk about this in Hickman County, which is rural and red. So I think this is like, I know these things are simple. We rely on trust and shared goals in our relationships every day, but it's different when we're doing that as leaders of agencies who all have different charges and we have different bosses in a certain sense. So again, I know this is not easy, but I do know it's possible, and I know that you all are ready to do it. Next slide, please. Humility can be hard to find in leadership these days. I don't have to don't have to step on that point much more, but we know that when we come together in partnership, that we do have space for it to be transactional, right? For you to get something and I to get something at the same time that we need. And I think that actually solidifies partnership. But really, this concept of humility over brand is about being willing to displace your own main interests in order for a greater collective good. And I think that's something that I think my read, of course, not anyone else's words, like my read of one of these huge challenges is that when you have LEAs, local workforce boards, and then statewide entities like the State Department of Education, the Governor's Workforce Board, you're going to have different priorities. It's just natural that you're going to have different priorities. And so sometimes you're going to have to subjugate a certain want or desire of your own in order to forward that of the group. And so that's where humility as a working concept is hugely important. But I think humility gets easier when you have alignment on that larger goal. Next slide, which I think is the last. I love this because being a node versus a hub, a hub is where things stop and have to be released again, whereas many different nodes can connect at many different points along this kind of web. This is kind of a key concept of counseling in general when it comes to career counseling, that is, or career coaching, is that you all experience this every day. You're just talking about it at the beginning. You help us use your networks to get expert reviewers for this content. That's your natural network. That's a natural way of being human. And that's what students need and they don't have when they're starting their career journeys. They don't have a huge network. Some people do, but many don't. And of course, that depends upon the industries and the education levels of the people you grow up and go to school with. And so where career coaches and others can create these more organic networks, I think is actually a really interesting metaphor for how you think about the web of activity and how you all can support one another across the state. We can go to the next slide. So I'm going to take a brief pause here because I went from, I know, like sort of high level meta ideas to thinking about how can we drive the kind of collaboration that you all need to succeed as a state level body overseeing work that is highly local, highly individualized. And we do have a couple examples just to give you a little bit of a flavor of like, here are some strong partnerships we've seen that are engaged in similar work. But I'll just take one pause here. And Gina, you're like my virtual like kick under the table of like, yeah, just keep going, or like, no, there's a need to pause here.
No, I think that we're good. But I am questioning how much time should we continue to take? Are we good on time? We're good. Okay, all right, cool. No, keep on, Jerry.
Great. These can be super short, and then we can take any questions you all have. So the next slide. So one here is an example of a statewide. So this is your neighbor. This is not, we're not trying to incite some competition or anything. And Shauna on our team actually lives and works in Delaware as well. But Delaware was another state that was in our initial Pathways of Prosperity network, a state where very few students were pursuing career pathways in the 2012 era. But then by 2017, they had codified I think, 14 pathways and had something like 70% of students engaged in a pathway in just the time of one cohort. But they were able to create a really strong state level team that each of these entities had a set of goals that they were responsible for in the strategic plan that they created. And they came together monthly over the course of that full time period. They were coordinated by the Rodell Foundation and United Way as like the key intermediary. But these entities, very familiar to what you all are doing, they were coming together, holding each other accountable on a monthly basis. How are we going to get students into pathways? How are we going to get pathways integrated across our K-12 and our higher education system? They did that within one cohort's time. So it's just one example of this is possible, but it does take this deep commitment to the concepts earlier of like humility over brand and node instead of a hub. And that they've been really successful in that first phase of transforming their system. And then the second example in the next slide is a more regional example, but maybe more relevant for those of y'all who are in Baltimore and thinking about what's more of a city focused approach look like. In Boston, a group of industries leaders sort of came together recognizing like, hey, how do we get movement on things that we know are struggles that are not working well in our public school system. And through a couple leaders started this private industry council, which has become one of the leading work-based learning intermediaries in the city. So they actually place a counselor or a career coach within schools in the city who directly interface with students every day to help them apply for and succeed in summer jobs and school year internships. So they're both providing support directly to the school system by adding that capacity. They're providing that direct mentorship and then career opportunities and paid work-based learning to students that is really helping them, in a city like Boston that has many different industries and has a lot of wealth and a lot of opportunity, but that opportunity is not evenly distributed. It's a powerful example of industry and an intermediary leading the way in a city to start connecting youth to opportunities and career exploration. So 2 examples of partners that we know and have worked with. And I'll just close by saying, we're excited to be in this work with you. As Gina mentioned, we have multiple years. So that's also exciting that it's not like, oh, we're not assuming like we're going to come in and fix things and then, good luck to y'all. No, we'll be in this with you. And we do know it's difficult and demanding work. And it's also work that requires some patience. So we hope that you all are as excited as we are and appreciate the time today. And we'll take questions from here.
Questions for the JFF team?
Just on the process, are you gonna be engaging with coaches directly or more through state and other partners?
Both. So I'm understanding there's a career counseling session next Monday or something.
The Maryland Workforce Association is hosting a convening for career coaches on April 28th.
Yes.
Which I believe we're attending as guests, to sort of
Yes,
observe and listen.
yeah.
And
So it's sort of twofold. It's like the gathering of information and data and then the direct conversations through things like focus groups and such. So yes, and yes. But I actually think some of our questions that we have will give you the opportunity to provide us with a little bit more input in what that looks like and what works best for you all. So John, if you'll actually go to the next slide for me.
And can I just,
Oh, sure.
I think what I understand, right, you guys can give me honest, but just so we're all level setting. This relationship, the state's relationship with Jobs for the Future just came about literally a couple of weeks ago.
yeah,
And so I think, I'm just gonna say, I think the answer to a lot of these questions is we don't know yet. And what I heard and appreciate from Jerry and Gina is more of, this was more of a, here's who we are, here's how we think about approaching this work in general. Here's how we approach this work in other places. But we need to now understand what is needed here in Maryland. So that's how I read what is being said here. Is that
No, I think that's
right?
articulating quite well.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of it is to be determined, but hopefully some of these questions will help us get to the next steps here. So yes, this is meant to wet your whistle, and hopefully we'll be able to like get in the weeds a lot more in the near future. So I think that's a great way to structure this. So I'm just gonna start with the first question on the slide here and ask bluntly, maybe not bluntly, but just what does career, success in career coaching look like to you?
I'm just gonna let you ask that question. First of all, we know that success is subjective, right? It just depends on the individual or the person. And in the position that I sit in, I'm constantly looking at data, right? And so data informs my work, whether students are progressing. And if they're not progressing, then we go back to the table, right? And then we see what's working and what's not working. But in terms of successful career coaching, the level of access for students to have experiences that are aligned to their interests. At the end of the day, we want them to be employed. We want them to be gainfully employed. So I think I can speak for a lot of career coaches. Our students having access to the experiences, you know, and making sure that we mitigate barriers for them. I think that's what success in career coaching would look like across the state.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The contexts are so different across the state, and I really appreciated what I heard you say earlier was that local context matters, right? What's best for the students in that particular place, because what is gonna work for my students here in Calvert County isn't necessarily what's gonna work in Dorchester County or Baltimore City or Washington County, right? Or anywhere in between, right? So I think that that's something really important to keep in mind. You know, I appreciate, and I think it's important that we're building a statewide ecosystem and network, especially having, you know, we are stronger when we're working together and things, but the ability to maintain local context and tailor responses that are very specific to specific places is going to be really important.
Yeah, this is Sharnetta and I'm on the virtual end. I would say from my perspective as an employer, one of the things that many students lack when they come into careers, whether they go to college or they don't, is just a plan. Like, what is it that they want to do? It seems like there's no plan. So if every student walks away with a plan, they have some type of guidance on how to move forward as they grow their careers and opportunities, but just to have a generalized plan to say, these are the things I'm interested in, these are the things I want to do, and these are the experiences I want to have, that it's helpful from an employer perspective to be able to satisfy that.
Add to that too, just that, and that students are leaving school with a plan, but also the capacity for the next step after that plan, or when the plan changes and when it has to change. Because I think being the skill that is being adaptable and being able to navigate a sudden change for the millions of things that happen in life is so critical. And I find that it's one that's really difficult sometimes for our young people. You know, I feel like, and they'll tell us sometimes that they're very used to being told, well, do this, and then this happens, and do this, and then this happens. They leave the safe confines of high school, and then they're, you know, in a college class, or they're in a first job, and all of a sudden they need to make a decision about a next step, and they're frozen, right? So, because the world works so quickly now, and we want our economy to continue to develop rapidly, they have to be developed for that. So I hope that we will continue to keep in mind not just the importance of, you know, in the work of the committee and within the blueprint of, you know, we want students to have a concrete plan, but what I tell my students all the time is, I want you to have a right now plan and the ability to make a next plan. So.
I love that, because that is what I think when I was an educator, I thought of my role not as teaching just the subject material, but as helping, and not even teaching, but helping students learn how they learn, like learn how to acquire a new set of understandings, how to acquire a new skill. Because none of us can lay out here's what the, you know,
future holds.
Yeah, I mean, you can lay out a 5-year plan, but 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
2 years in, that whole thing has been blown to bits. And so I think we want our students to have that ability to know how to adjust. And so in the context of career coaching, to me, that is thinking about how do you understand an industry? How do you understand your own sets of skills and expertise? And how do you learn? How do you research and figure out, like, if I want this, how do I need to develop and how might I do that? Because it's impossible to lay all of the various permutations in front of students, but if you teach them how to do that, now you've equipped someone to be resilient in the face of whatever.
Do you have any other thoughts on that question online? Otherwise, I'm gonna maybe kind of lean to move us to another point in the discussion for a few minutes. And I think hearing and maybe seeing none for now, I want to also kind of bring it back to, you know, the scope of work over the coming 3 years, sort of, I say scope of work like it's super defined, but the sort of rough game plan with Jobs of the Future, at least as relates to the CTE committee, and there are many partners in this work, sister agencies or local partners, but is centered around the required evaluation that we have sort of mandated in the blueprint and seeking some support and really expertise in conducting that type of evaluation, thinking through asking the right questions, and really getting that work done. We also understood from kind of our work traveling around the state that we didn't necessarily just want to evaluate the memorandums of understanding between all the local partners. We wanted to maybe take a chance to say what is uplift locally, what is working well in different areas, what might be tailored to a specific region, what might be scalable, or what might another district want to see and learn from, you know, being able to, like you kind of, I like the way you said statewide network. And so the scope of work that's really rooted in the evaluation and in thinking about with our local colleagues, what else might we want JFF to help us produce those tangible things that a coach could use or that a district could use or a local board could use. So there's a lot of openings to think about what are those tangible things, those gaps we could use them to help us fill, because we all have 10 million jobs to do, at least at staff level, right? Certainly our volunteer committee members, of course, as well. And so I think with that, maybe if we want to spend just a couple minutes before we move on that I was going to actually, I saw Jason, you raised your hand. I was going to jump maybe just to like the kind of last piece around the evaluation, just like if there are things that you're just like, you know, right now off the top of your head, like you want to know when we embark on this evaluation about career coaching. This is not the only time to provide that feedback, obviously, but you know, when it comes to understanding the state of career coaching across the state, what do you want to know? Is it just those metrics kind of on that legislative update slide? Or is there more? But please, now I saw you raise your hands.
I'm sorry. I didn't-
No, it's okay.
Yeah,
No, that's all right.
I thought you were just moving from the first question. I just want to make one point, and I might, you know, see if folks agree. I totally agree that, you know, we don't want to have one size fits all, and what we do in Prince George is the same in Calvert, it's the same as Baltimore. When I was the local workforce director, as this was getting unfolded in Baltimore City, I would not have wanted the state, don't want the state now, to say, do all these 12 things, that's it, nothing
Right.
more, nothing less, that's it.
Mhm.
On the other hand, I do think there's some core elements
Mhm.
that would translate anywhere to what a coach is.
Mhm.
Not, you know, again, it's not limiting, but it's some core. And what I found frustrating when I was the local director in the city, when this was unfolded, is I got nothing.
Mhm.
So I don't want people to get nothing. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want it, I want people to have some, and I want it to be, you know, as soon as possible, because I'm anxious. And I do hear the preaching patience, and I want to do patient, but I'm anxious because it's, you know, it's gonna be year 3 soon.
Yeah.
And coaches are in buildings meeting the young people
Now.
now.
Yeah.
And so those coaches, you know, are amazing and they're doing great things, but I know they would benefit from more help. And so that's all
Yeah.
that's where I keep pushing on, like, to get something specific.
Yeah.
That's right. So,
Yeah.
thank you for.
No, I mean, that's it's an important thing to raise too. I mean, this is all happening now, right? Yeah. Okay, no, it's all right. I think others don't want to maybe weigh in right now. I know we do also want to make sure we get to hear from our local highlighter generous hosts, who have given some of us at least a tour, which was really fabulous. So I'll stop too much.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. First, I want to thank you. We're lucky to have Carrie Aikens here, and you and your team hosted such an incredible visit for us. And this is a really incredible place here. So I'm excited for everyone to hear more about the work that you're doing.
get to wrap up the day. That's exciting. So, well, thank you for being here. There's plenty of folks here in the room. Those of you that are virtual, you're welcome anytime. So just give me a call. But so thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit today. So those that don't know me, I'm Carrie Akins. I wear many hats here in Calvert County. I am the district director for CTE. I'm the principal here in this building. It's the Career and Technology Academy, where we house 14 of our CTE programs in the district. And I also oversee career counseling. So those are some of the things that I do here. Just a little bit of context. If you don't know, if you've never traveled down the peninsula, if you're going a little, not far enough east to cross the water, but you know, kind of come down the peninsula down here in Calvert County, and it's a beautiful place to visit. We definitely encourage, but we are what you consider to be a mid-sized district in the state, and classically considered rural as well. So next slide, please. So the building that we are currently sitting in and where this is being presented from is the Career and Technology Academy. And we have our little hashtag that we use in our branding when we do that here. Those that took the tour heard me say that became our little phrase, because inevitably when I'm giving this presentation or when I'm doing the tour, someone just kind of has their jaw open and they say, wow, I had no idea that you guys do that here, right? So we do that. So next slide, please. So the programs that we have here, the CTE programs that are here at CTA, I'm not going to read them all out loud, but I've provided those along with the IRCs that our students are earning in those particular programs. And those, for the most part, are ones that we've been doing for years. Some are newer than others. A lot of our programs here, maybe a little bit uniquely from some other places in the state, students in our programs here at the CTA actually have the chance to earn multiple IRCs in most cases. Next slide, please. We also have programs at our 4 comprehensive high schools in the district. There are 11, and if you notice, there are not as many IRCs that are denoted next to those, and that's a growth area for us. Traditionally, a lot of the students in those programs, and I should back up, all of our programs, all 25 of the programs, many of them have some form of college credit with them. So either articulated credit, a couple of them are dual enrollment. And so in the past, the students that were in these programs really were leaning heavily on those college credit components. So we're continuing to look at what IRCs make the most sense to incorporate with those. It's really important for us that we don't want to just start giving kids tests for the sake of giving tests. We want everything we do to be meaningful. So we're, in some cases, we're, looking at the published list of IRCs to see what makes most sense for us. Next slide. And next slide. So some of our biggest successes to talk about. So, and I could have put a lot of things on these slides and kind of pick the ones that jumped right out at me, but we also have, we have a 99% graduation rate for our CTE students. But in the class of 2024 last year, we had 88% of our CTE students that completed an IRC. So we were really excited about, so of the students that took an IRC, I should say, we had 88% of them pass it. And that represented about 18% of the total graduation class. So again, as we start to bring on board more of those IRCs in the other 11 programs that are in the homeschools, that number will go up significantly and quickly for us. Our teachers are fantastic. They do an incredible job. We have several programs that have year-on-year 98% plus, and honestly, most of the ones on this list, 100% pass certification pass rates. Those that were on the tour, we talked to our literally newly minted CNAs. They just took their exams this week and got the results yesterday. So we just passed 24 more CNAs. And so those students are doing CNA and CCMA. They also all passed the CCMA in the fall. We flip-flop the group. So we actually are the largest area supplier of those credentials. So regionally, so we're pretty proud of that. And then we have multiple other programs where we have just very high pass rates. Our fire EMT program, that percentage of students that are taking and earning their EMT certification is extremely impressive. 100% of our fire students annually. And business management, we've been doing the MBA research ethics credential for them, which is not an approved IRC, but it's one that has been meaningful for those students in that it's giving them kind of a micro credential that is really helping them. A lot of those students aspire to go on to complete business degrees. And so it's been a really nice little thing that they have to be able to go into those, interviews or for scholarship applications. And some of them have told us, like, as they've gone away and started business programs, they have this foundational understanding of ethics that they can prove that they have that understanding. So next slide. Some other things, over the past 5 years, we have a high rate of CTE completers. And so I'm very confident that as we continue down the path to the 45% goal for us in Calvert County, most of the accomplishment of that 45% goal will probably be IRCs until the landscape expands pretty significantly for apprenticeship here. But we're pretty confident in being able to hit that. Over 75% of our CTE completers earn some form of college credit. And 84% of our CTE completers were dual completers. So we really have been proud of the fact that we are very mindful in understanding that our students are really college and career ready. And people that know me have heard me say before, honestly, if it was up to me, we would take the word college out, because the end goal, we want them all to be career ready. Sometimes you have to go through college to do that, and sometimes you don't. So at the end of the day, we want them all to have careers. But we do really appreciate that we've broken down a lot of barriers that would have maybe tracked kids in one direction or another. In this building, we operated on a complete lottery system. That's very intentional because we don't want there to be any kind of, human error that occurs perhaps in, making decisions about who does or who does not get to have access to those opportunities. And that's been so successful that we're pretty over enrolled in a lot of cases every year. So now I just have to expand. But our criminal justice program is our largest completer every year with, tends to be about 150 completers. And those students actually receive 12 dual enrollment credits in College of Southern Maryland. So those that want to go on and quickly finish an associate's degree can do that pretty quickly. I mentioned that one because I know that criminal justice has been one that's been a bit of a struggle to kind of identify what's an appropriate IRC for those students. So an associate's degree in criminal justice is a pretty valuable credential for those students. And we excel in CTSL events. Sorry to my other friends across the state that are listening, but so we do very well in those things as well. Next slide, please. So challenges, I mentioned a minute ago, capacity, over enrollment, especially here at CTA. Now, we've been pretty lucky in that up until this point at least, and I don't see why it would change. Our 11 programs in the home schools are open enrollment. And so where we have kids that are interested in the number of sections or classes grows, we just keep growing them because we can do that. In this building, we're limited a little bit by space, equipment, things like that, and sometimes staffing. So we are over enrolled this year, about 60 students on the wait list for HVAC, welding, electricity, and then about 40 students on wait list for other programs. We have tried some creative ways to expand that. We continue working with community college partners on some new ways to maybe expand that, and apprenticeship is playing a role in that as well. Some of the IRC alignment, like I said, we're still working on some of those things. It's very important to me and to us here that we continue to make sure that as the blueprint rolls out, and we talk about that there are 3 post CCR pathways, right? That there's an AP pathway, that there's a dual enrollment pathway, there's a CTE pathway, that we don't accidentally send students the message that it's very much an and we've been very successful in that here, and we want that to continue. So just making sure that any obstacles or barriers that might come up, whether it's funding or whether it's just student perceptions, that we are at the ground level of eliminating those things. We're always working on business engagement and support, and our business partners here have been great. We have some real wonderful success stories about some strong partnerships, especially as we've moved into some apprenticeship pieces, but also just supporting our CTE programs in general, hiring our students. We just had about 50 businesses here last week, I think, for our career fair. And now that we have career counselors, we've expanded that career fair out of this building into other buildings, right? So those are good things, but emerging industries, of course, again, are a challenge for us here in a smaller ecosystem. Next slide. Next slide. So there's a couple, talk a little bit about youth apprenticeship here in Calvert County, which has grown a lot for us. And these are some photos of some of our students. These are some of my favorite photos. So that's why these are here. That top one with the big glass building there, the first one, that is the brand new library in North Beach. It's beautiful. That window faces the bay, just in case you're wondering. It's a really nice place to sit and read a book. So that lucky student graduated last year, had the opportunity to build that building, which I think is really neat. We had student and then kind of corner to that, like down with the student in the yellow shirt. He's actually working on sprinkler fittings, and that was in our most newly open remodeled elementary school. So that was. Next slide. Again, some of our partners that we have worked with in apprenticeships, it's growing all the time, which is a very good thing. I will say that the nice thing for us with apprenticeships is we've been able to really use it as an opportunity for students who have really specific interests or maybe didn't know they had specific interests. There are a lot of like kind of niches that we are filling for our local workforce, right? So, you know, obviously, I'm probably not going to get to a place where I can have an entire maritime repair trades program here in the building. I'd love to, but boats are kind of big, so they're a little hard to fit. So we have some great partners in those fields. And obviously in Calvert County, that's an important infrastructure, right? So ways that we can kind of fill those needs in other ways. Next slide. So just kind of our historical growth for youth apprenticeship. So you can see that the first bar is the number of applicants. So as the program has gotten out there, you know, doubling and tripling every year, just how many students are interested, unfortunately, a little bit slower growth in the available positions, right? So we really want to get to a place where that first bar and that second bar match. So that's kind of the work ahead of us. And then for next year, kind of giving a list of what we believe we're going to have available for apprenticeships. Next year, we're in the interviewing process and scheduling process with students now, but we're anticipating 20 to 25 apprenticeships for next year with a couple of new partners on board. Probably the biggest area for growth for us has been in hospitality and culinary, because as far as industries go, that is one of our bigger ones. And I would say struggle points maybe in terms of size of the industry and getting apprenticeships has been in healthcare. And so it's a big industry, but we just haven't had a whole lot of luck just yet in that area. Next slide. And so some barriers, right? So the availability of open positions, the funding for student apprentice wages, whether that's students that are doing youth apprenticeships in the school system or even with other smaller businesses, right? When we have, you know, the vast majority of our businesses that are, you know, mom and pop shops, you know, that might only employ, you know, 15 or less people. That's a big ask, right? Even though the relative amount of wages for minimum wage for 450 hours isn't a lot, it's still a big ask. Because it's a smaller economy, you know, we're a little bit limited. Like for example, last year we had 9 students apply for one HVAC apprenticeship that we had for a local partner. We have been too successable. And what I mean by that is that we have on that slide with the pictures, for example, there was a young man, saying they were at a boat yard. He hired him and has kept him and he still works there. And so there's no more space for another student to come in. But that's what we tell employers all the time, why they should buy into apprenticeship, right? Like help us fill your workforce needs. And we did that really well. So blessing and curse. The diversity of the placement opportunities. And you know, so I think a lot of things that probably a lot of places face student challenges, the transportation here in a more rural place. We don't have a, you know, significant public transportation system. We do have public transit, but you know, accessing it sometimes, or you know, just where the stops are, those kinds of things. We're continuing to chip away at student scheduling. You know, how does it, you know, one of the things that I'm really hopeful as the blueprint continues to come forward will be that, you know, maybe some possible movement in graduation requirements. Really looking at like, you know, what things are absolutely necessary to say a student must have a full year of this thing for, you know, this many years, because sometimes those blocks really start to add up and kind of get in the way of You know, for example, they all need 4 years of English and they all need 4 years of math. So senior year, that's at least 2 periods you need to be in school. Because we're a smaller district, we don't have, you know, say a virtual school or an evening school. And so when I'm putting the kids in the building for 2 periods a day, they're going in the morning and they're, you know, their apprentice sponsor saying, well, yeah, but we work at the same hours when school is in session. So that can be challenging. So we're working through some things, trying to be creative with solutions there, as well. The last one on there, just still working through employers, and perceptions maybe of high school students, right? And, that's just work that'll we'll all continue to work on together. Next slide. And next slide. So, one of the things that we have done here as an innovation, we have really, implemented a very intentional project-based learning initiative. And it's not unique to CTE, but I wanted to highlight it to the committee, because really the hope is that it's really incorporating this whole other piece of skills that students need to be employable. So next slide. So we've been successful. The program, it's actually in its 3rd year. This is the first year that it's come under the CTE umbrella specifically as it's expanded. But we have had a lot of success working in classrooms K through 12. And so students have done some pretty remarkable things in those projects. I mean, they have done, well, actually, I'll hold on to that because I think I have a slide for that. Next slide. So some of this important skills, why project-based learning is really important to us. These are the things that students are really learning as in a project-based learning model, right? So authenticity, they're learning inquiry, they are learning their content standards, but there's employability skills, collaboration, problem solving, really working through those things. And those really are the things they need to be. Our employers will tell us, you know, honestly, if they had to pick what students came to them with, they would pick these things over the technical skills. They'll tell you, we can teach them the technical skills if you can send them to us with these things. Next slide. And so again, this year, we're really just kind of focusing firmly on bringing PBL and infusing it with CTE. We do a lot of this already in CTE, but making it very intentional so that we can very confidently say at the end of a CTE program, we have very intentionally taught those employability slide. And some program highlights, some that I'll just pull out, especially some recent ones. We had a very cool one this year. It was actually a middle school science project. Their environmental literacy standard was around, I think, understanding ecosystems, invasive species, which the teacher said was not one of the students' favorite topics. So brought in this idea that you could eat your problems. So invasive catfish, right, in the bay, that if you catch the catfish, that is actually the best way to control that invasive species. And so they collaborated with our culinary arts students. With the 7th grade science students, they created like recipes. I had a whole lot of different takes on blackened catfish. It's a rough job I have, but so that one was pretty cool. Our high school criminal justice students did a really cool presentation on cyberbullying and cybersecurity. That was all student prepared and led. And some other just really incredible projects that they've done. Next slide. So as I mentioned, I am also in charge of career counseling here, and we are pretty proud of how that program has rolled out for us. We have very intentionally focused around this idea of questions, not answers, and building a capacity building approach for our students. Our career counselors will tell you that their role is not to give students answers. They really are guides on a path, right, to help students, figure out their own answers. Next slide. So our career advising program uses a human-centered dialogic process to help students build capacity and self-awareness so that when they graduate, they can navigate this ever-changing world of work. Career advising is about supporting students in developing skills and asking and answering questions, not about giving the answers. So we want to help students find their best person fit career. It's also not the old fashioned, like sitting down and somebody saying, well, here, take this test. And it says you're really good at math and you like working with people. So maybe you should be a math teacher, right? Like it's now maybe you should, but also there's probably 100 other careers that could apply to as well. We also find there's real answers in the world that are things like you can be good at math and still not like it. I mean, so there's just so many dynamics that go into it that it's never our job to just tell students or give students an answer. We were talking earlier about personal experience. I was told in high school that I should, go to the workforce, that I wasn't going to college, and that was not nice. So, that. And we all know, everybody has stories like that, right? So we want to just continue to move away from that. So this approach has been very important to us. Next slide. So what it's not giving students answers. It's not tracking. We don't want to see, again, this building is open lottery. Like it's not about like, well, what math did you complete and what grade did you get in that class? I want to make sure that as we continue to roll out, CCR standards and when students can access CTE programs, that we keep that in mind, because sometimes CTE is the thing that helps the student get to CCR. And that, we all grow at different rates. Some of us bloom in 8th grade and some of us bloom in 27th grade, right? It's all different places along the journey, and there is no right or wrong answer. It's also making sure that students know exactly what career they want to pursue. And make sure they have a solid plan. I tell kids all the time that college is not a career plan, that college is part of a career plan. So that the answer when I say, well, what are you doing after high school, should not be I'm going to college. Say, no, what are you doing after high school, right? So why are you going to college? Well, I don't know, right? We don't want that to happen. But if it's one, I'm going to go to college and I think I'm going to start out here, that's okay. You don't have to have all the answers in 6th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade. You just 27th grade, you just don't. So and the program is also not specifically focused on just CTE programs. Career advising is just as much for our students who know. Now, maybe they don't know, they've decided college and they don't know exactly why or where or what. But career advising is absolutely as much for them, because those are the kids that right now are going away to school and they spend 4 years on some degree and then find out they hate it, right? So it's just as much for them. Next slide. So we're really focusing on moving from transactional to transformational, not asking what do you want to be when you grow up, and instead we're asking things, what are your strengths, your interests, your values, how can you apply them in the world of work that's meaningful for you and the lifestyle you want. We don't make assumptions. Sometimes people think it's all about the money, and for a lot of young people, one of their biggest motivating factors is not money. It's actually where and how they feel like they can make a meaningful impact difference. And that's a generational difference that sometimes those into other generations don't realize. And we lead in with the, well, did you know you could do a CTE program and make this much money and have no college debt? And while that's certainly great and it's a selling point, sometimes kids hear you and go, okay, but what is that going to mean for me in my job, my life satisfaction? So we want to make our experiences relevant and reflective and connect our classroom lessons and tools to that personal expression. Next slide. Oh, you're on the right one. So some of the highlighted activities, this is a picture of our 6th graders and their me trees. So the highlight question in 6th grade is, who am I? Which when I said that at lunch, it was like, wow, that's a really big question. And it is, especially for a 12-year-old, right? But we want to start thinking about who they are as humans. Our hope is as this rolls out, we kind of have this plan for like how they can look at this again when they're seniors and reflect on how it's changed, right? But, our values and our interests change, right? But, who we are as people and our values and what's important to us, but probably doesn't change as significantly, right? Like we believe what we believe, and it's going to grow and it's going to shape, but getting a sense of that, and then how does it apply to work? So I wish you could see some of the details, although the kids did amazing. They wrote some really cool things on there. In seventh grade this year, we did a reality finance fair, which was really cool. Super jealous of my friends in Montgomery County and their finance park and our friends in other places in the state that have junior achievement. We don't, just saying, but, so, which we did, but that's all right. We made our own and it was even better. So, we had, community partners come in and help us put this on. It was a great experience. The kids loved it. This year was a pilot year for it. So next year we're looking forward to doing all seventh graders. Our eighth grade students see all of our CTE programs, both here and in their comprehensive schools, and then high school, some things like student. We have a goal that every student pre-CCR has some kind of shadowing opportunity, and that post-CCR, they all participate in a mock interview. And that's just a few things. So next slide. So our program is really built around a district approach. We knew from the beginning in terms of scalability, we do have a career advisor in every middle and high school, as well as one person that oversees the program, and she's located here. And so she does also work with the students at CTA, but we knew that those, 11 people would never be able to do all of this on their own. And so it's very dependent on working with our teachers, our school counselors, our instructional specialists, and everyone in the district. We've done core trainings in RISEC, which is the language we use, with our school board members, our local advisory council, our business partners, so that everybody can be on board, so that because we all work with students to coach them and guide them. We just recently asked the seventh grade students on a survey we did with them, who have you talked to this year about careers? And they said career advisors, but that's kind of in the middle of the list, and the top of the list, parents, friends, people I know from home, right? So getting that information out to those folks, right? So the kids are getting a consistent message that really helps them, you think is important. Next slide. And then our last initiative that I just wanted to quickly mention. One thing we did this year was we really wanted to be in the spirit of the blueprint, especially was be more strategic about how we're engaging our partners. So we looked at one of our barriers, as I mentioned, is that we are a smaller district. The ecosystem is smaller, that's reality and it is what it is. But that's not going to stand in our way. So we wanted to be strategic about how we engage the local partners that we do have that are very good partners to us without overtaxing them, without, them kind of saying, oh, look, I can only do so much. We wanted to make sure we maintain a spirit of equity for all of our students in the district. If you have ever, I don't know if this is as far south as you've ever been in Calvert County, but you're only in the middle. There's actually like a whole nother side, keep going south. So I see some people laughing, right? If you know, But so it's a very long county. So the northern end is maybe half an hour outside of DC, and the southern end is probably an hour and a half outside of DC, right? So so just what's available is a little bit different. So we wanted to make sure though that, so then our students on the northern end of the county weren't getting all these really cool experiences with like cool guest speakers, and students on the southern end of the county, well, I want to see that. I'm going to hear that. And so making sure we could do that. So what we did was we were very intentional in partnering. We pulled together our apprenticeship coordinator, our career advising coordinator, and our project-based learning coordinator all together in one office. They're creating a database of partners together that kind of tags it to like what those people's specific areas of expertise are, what they could potentially offer, what they're willing to offer. So that they can be working together. It gives us a central point of contact, right? So they're not getting calls from, 14 different school counselors about career day coming up, right? They get one contact. And so we really think that intentionality in the framework and how we engage is going to help us move forward. So next slide. So be happy to talk anytime. I really did mean it that if you ever want to did make it today and you ever want to come visit, you are welcome anytime.
Thank you so much, Karen. I can't help but reflect, Jason, you were asking about what are the resources we're going to give to career coaches. And what comes to my mind is there's some pretty great things that are happening here, and I'm sure in other counties. And maybe part of the work is just pulling those things together and creating some of those best practices, which you guys, folks like you around the state are already leading this work in county by county. So yeah,
Maryland's a pretty cool place, and I don't know if it's unique or not, but I like to think it is. I think that we all work really well together.
Like,
Yeah.
even nobody telling us that we should work together, like
Yeah.
we've always worked well
Yeah.
together. And career counseling has been no different. That the career counseling convening that's coming up was an organic, growth of some career counselors and people in the LEA side. They got together and said, we should all get together and we should talk. And that planning became a thing. And so, and moving forward, so, it's the best state in the whole 50 and that's,
Yes.
and it's true. And
Love
that's
it.
where I'm gonna end it.
I love
So-
We'll agree on that.
That's a great note to end on. So I'll just go through a few next steps. We're going to be launching the work with Jobs for the Future around career coaching, evaluation, and technical assistance. I know some of the committee members may have more questions or thoughts about this. So please send them to committee staff to bring together for Jobs for the Future, and there'll be more coming to the committee around this. We're gonna launch the Perkins Reserve Grant discussions, so that will be coming up. We've got some planning and pre-work for the junior strategy and impact retreat, so stay tuned for more details on that. And then we're gonna ask for input to help guide the expert review team deployment plan for next school year. So that's kind of what's in front of us. With that, I think, did we cover everything?
I think so,
All
yeah.
right, good work, everybody. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Should that we adjourn to the meeting?
Okay, can I have a second? Someone on the call is gonna have to do that.
Second.
Thank you. Any opposed to adjourning? Great, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.